So UFC Fight Night Mexico just ended, and the card wasn't really that bad in terms of fights, but in terms of skill level, it was one of the worst cards I've ever seen. And I think at this point, the UFC needs to think about going back to elevation. Elevation is not the play anymore. It's not what we should do in the UFC. Overall, it just makes the fights look sloppy, look slow, look just unskilled, untechnical, and I think it really puts a hamper on the fighter's ability in the octagon and just makes the cards overall just trash, man. But you know what? Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Featherweight is cooked, man. Featherweight is done. The top 5 at featherweight besides Holloway just looks like it's not really that competitive towards Ilya and Volk. And I'm really going to key in on Yair versus Ortega here because that didn't look like a top 5 featherweight fight. And that could just be the elevation that played a part in that, but it just didn't seem like those were two elite top 5 featherweights fighting each other. It seemed like two unranked fighters. When I watch Brian Ortega fight, it just seems like he's a walking punching bag, and Yair has absolutely zero takedown defense. And these two guys are ranked at number 3 and number 4 in your division, and it seems like they don't even stand a chance against Topuria. And we've already seen Volk beat these two guys up pretty bad, and Volk just got flatline KO'd by Ilia Topuria. And I genuinely think the only person who can pose a decent threat to Ilia Topuria is Max Holloway, and he might not even get a title shot because he might lose to Justin Gaethje on UFC 300. And so at this point, what do you even do with featherweight? Because you just can't give Ortega a title shot. He's coming off one win in the UFC against Yair, who just lost to Volkanovski. You can give Volk a rematch, but he needs some time off, man, and it might be over 6 months before we even see Topuria back in the octagon. And to me, the UFC should just pull the trigger and make Topuria versus Evloev, announce it in a month's time here. Just give Evloev the title shot. He's the only person who possibly makes some sort of sense, and even that's kind of a stretch because there's pretty much no guy in the top 5 at featherweight who has definitively earned a title shot against Topuria. I mean, Volk can't do it right now. He needs a rematch. Holloway's fighting Gaethje, and he might lose, and if he does win, then you probably give it to Holloway. And if Holloway does win, he's probably going to take some damage against Gaethje, at least a little bit. He'll probably need at least a month or 2 to recover. And then there's Evloev at number 5, and he just pretty much got into the number 5 spot beating Arnold Allen. So there's really nobody that has like a full concrete case to get the next title shot at featherweight. And this is such a big deal to me because I want Topuria to be active. The reason why I liked Volk so much was the fact that he was an active champion. And if Topuria can't be active, that just kind of messes up the whole featherweight division. Active champions make the sport better, and Topuria might just be forced to sit out for 7-8 months because there's no contender that makes sense right now. And the one that makes the most sense currently right now is Evloev, coming off of a win. He beat Arnold Allen, top 5 in the division, and that's really about it. Holloway has to beat Gaethje for him to earn a title shot in the featherweight division. And even that being the case, I mean, it's like Holloway beats Gaethje at 155. Should he just stay there and try to fight Islam down the line, or just get another lightweight matchup? Or should he come back down to a division where he was unsuccessful in beating Volk 3 times and try to beat Topuria? Everything's pretty much screwed. The UFC might just do Ortega versus Evloev to earn a title shot versus Topuria. I don't see them giving Ortega a title shot to fight him. There's really nothing you can do, I guess, besides putting Topuria out on the sidelines to just watch and wait for the next contender to come up, which is so dumb. But let's get back to the whole Yair versus Ortega fight. That fight was absolutely trash. The first round was good. Yair hurt Ortega. He dropped him at one point, probably a 10-8 round for himself. But after that, man, the skill level just went so down. It became so sloppy and not a technical battle. And we've known Yair's been a good striker and he's very rangy, but he didn't do the things that he was supposed to do to beat Ortega. Where were the low kicks? I'm pretty sure Ortega rolled his ankle in the middle of the introduction into the fight. Like he was getting announced and he rolled his ankle jumping up and down. So Yair, where are the low kicks, man? And where's your takedown defense, man? You're fighting Ortega. Ortega's main game plan in every single fight, sometimes it is striking, but I think what he really excels at is the jiu-jitsu. So he's going to want to get these fights to the ground. Why don't you have any takedown defense? And you can't say, oh, I saw this coming, man. Yair got out-grappled by Volk. Yair got out-grappled by Volk after he got rocked by him. So it's like, you can't really predict this shit, man. Ortega hasn't fought in over a year and a half. He's like 1-3 in his last 4, and he got beat up pretty bad in those matchups. Hasn't won a fight since like 2020. How can you predict Ortega to win besides having just a uncomfortable feeling and just going based off of your gut? But if I'm Yair and I'm game planning for Ortega, he tried to take me down in the first fight. Actually, he did take me down and I put him in an armbar. So why aren't you focusing on your takedown defense, bro? And it just shows like there's not this huge extreme level. Like, could he even stuff a takedown? I don't think Yair even stuffed one takedown against Ortega. And when you watch Ortega fight, bro, he just walks forward, throwing these little soft jabs all the time. And he's so open to getting hit. Ortega is like, maybe he was rusty because it's been over a year and a half. Maybe he just needed to get into the flow of the fight, maybe work on his striking a little bit more. But it just looked like Ortega just didn't have the fundamentals or the striking ability of a top 5 featherweight. And we've always known Ortega's takedowns aren't the craziest takedowns of all time. Like, when do we ever see Ortega getting a nice double leg and picking somebody up and dunking them on their head? Like, it's very few and far between. Ortega is not a top 5 featherweight in my opinion. Neither is Yair anymore. I don't think Yair got fraud checked. I think we use that term too loosely now. I think losing to the number 4 ranked guy at featherweight doesn't mean you were a fraud. You lost to a top 5 guy. That can't be a fraud check. Fraud check is more reserved for fighters who are unranked and they lose to a certain fighter. Like, we should use fraud check in a more specific instance instead of saying that anybody who loses that we thought would win is getting fraud checked. But I don't know, man. Like, what do you really do for featherweight at this point? Yair, I mean, what do you do for Yair? I guess you give him maybe, I don't know, maybe a Josh Emmett. I don't know. Maybe you give Ortega a Josh Emmett. I mean, you probably give Ortega Evloev. But what do you really do for Yair here, man? Like, I thought Yair was going to be the toughest style matchup for Topuria. I think Topuria really struggles with guys who are tall, rangy, who throw a lot of kicks. And now I'm just kind of thinking about it like, no, maybe that's not the case. Maybe Topuria just sleeps him in round 1. Like, when you watch Topuria versus Jai Herbert, I think Yair does what Jai Herbert does way better than him, and he would be a really tough style matchup for Topuria. I would still pick Topuria all damn day, but don't get me wrong. I think Topuria would struggle more with Yair than he would with Volk. Styles make fights. We know how this shit works. But man, at this point, who can say that Topuria just doesn't go for a double leg and take down Yair and just ground and pound him out? Like, Topuria has good grappling as well. So I don't know what to do with Yair or Ortega. Featherweight's kind of cooked. What do you really do in general? This card overall was not the best card in terms of technical ability. There were some good scraps on the card, like I believe Manuel Torres had a good performance. I mean, Edgar Chavez had a good performance, but that was against Daniel Lacerda. Lacerda's dog shit. Jesus Aguilar versus Mateus Mendoza was pretty decent, but again, didn't look like it was a high-level fight. Zellhuber versus Prado, again, not a high-level fight, but those guys are pretty young, so maybe they can improve. But overall, the card at Elevation just kind of ruins everything, in my opinion. It really does make fighters look not as good as maybe they can be. And maybe that's what happened with Yair and Ortega. Maybe these guys are still really good featherweights, but the Elevation really just messed them up entirely and made them look not top 5 level. So I'm all for not going back to Elevation. If it makes fights look this bad and look this unskilled, then we probably just shouldn't go back. If you're hindering the fighter's ability because of the Elevation, then just don't go back. But then again, the fights weren't bad in terms of entertainment, just in terms of skill. They didn't look the best that I've ever seen. And for my predictions for this card, I didn't do too hot. I should have picked fucking Raoni Barcelos. I should have picked Manuel Torres. I just had this weird gut feeling, and I changed my pick last second. I'm an idiot for that. I should have picked those two, and I would have been positive for the card, but I broke even. I should have went 7-6 if Raul Rosas Jr. fought, but he didn't fight. And I didn't even mention Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Oh my God, Moreno's cooked, bro. Moreno's done. That fight was so boring, I kind of put it in the back of my head and just locked it away. But that fight was, I mean, one of the worst flyweight fights I've seen in quite a while. It was mainly Moreno not throwing any punches, just throwing overhand rights and overhands in general, while Royval was pretty much just hitting the guard only with just pitter-patter shots. It wasn't a entertaining fight whatsoever, and I think Moreno has taken too much damage in his career so far. Maybe he needs to take some time off. I don't know what to do with Moreno. Royval wins. You can't do him versus Pantoja because he just lost to Pantoja. So what do you do at flyweight now? I guess Amir Albazi versus somebody. Manel Cap fucked up. If Manel Cap made weight, he would be the one getting the title shot. But guess what? He couldn't make weight. He couldn't fight Kai Kara-France and beat him. And now he kind of has messed up flyweight because he couldn't make weight. So I don't know what you really do right now. Everything is cooked at flyweight. Everything is cooked at featherweight. This card just made everything worse in the UFC, in my opinion. It made the divisions more, I guess, unstable or more log jammed. I don't know. It just these fights just didn't lead us anywhere. There was no progression in either division, in flyweight and featherweight, or in any division besides maybe lightweight with Manuel Torres. It just really feels like we could have had this card and we would have been the exact same if we didn't have it. I don't know, man. Everything is cooked. I was tired. It was 1 a.m. The fight was getting boring between Moreno and Royval, so I just kind of lost my mind for a second. But I don't know, man. I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. I'll see you later. Peace.